I remember the morning the lake changed its mind about me. The mist was so thick it felt like breath I could walk through, and my boat barely whispered against the water. I'd fished that same stretch since I was a boy. Same oars, same rhythm, same quiet prayer under my breath before the first cast. The kind of silence that tells you you're still alive. That morning, the silence felt listening. I let down the net, the rope rough and wet between my fingers. The dawn light hadn't broken yet. Everything was blue and slow. I counted my breaths, waited for the tug I knew so well. Catfish, maybe, or nothing. Nothing was fine. Then the rope jerked, hard enough to pull me forward. I braced my feet, felt the wood groan beneath me. Whatever was down there, it wasn't moving like any fish I knew. The water trembled, deep and cold, like it was holding something back. I pulled once, twice. The line strained, heavy as guilt. My arms burned, my heart thudded in my ears. For a second, I thought the lake had decided to swallow me whole. And then, release. A slow, rising shape under the surface. Not slick like a fish, not soft. Something square, edged, wrong. When it broke through, the sound it made wasn't a splash. It was a cough, like the lake itself exhaling. A chest barnacled and black, dripping age and mud. I stared at it, unsure if I'd caught it or if it had found me. I touched the lid with my oar. It rang, metal. The net had torn, shredded around its corners. I should have left it there, let the water keep its secret, but I couldn't. My hands moved before my mind did. I hauled it in, the weight near breaking my back. It landed with a dull thud at my feet, the sound too human, like a body dropped. I stood there breathing hard, the mist curling around me. The chest sat still, locked tight, but the air changed. The smell of rust, of something old and knowing. And under all that silence, I could swear I heard it shift. Just once. A faint metallic rattle, deep inside. The sun started to rise then, orange burning through fog, but I couldn't look away. I'd come out that morning to catch something to eat. Instead, I'd hooked the past. And the past, I could already tell, didn't want to stay buried.
By the time I turned the boat toward shore, the fog had thinned, but my thoughts hadn't. That chest sat near my feet like a sleeping thing, dark and wet, catching the light in mean little glints. Each oar pull sounded louder than it should, like the lake was listening for what I'd taken. I kept my eyes on the waterline, but I could feel it, the chest, pressing at the edges of my calm. Then came the sound. A faint rattle from inside. Not wind, not water, metal against metal. I froze mid-row, my heart stuttered, and for a second I thought about throwing it back. But curiosity has its own kind of hunger. The village roofs rose ahead through the mist, tin and smoke and morning firelight. I slowed my strokes, trying to quiet the noise, though my own breathing gave me away. I pulled into the dock, slid the chest under a torn net, and sat still until the world felt ordinary again. Walking home, I nodded at folks starting their day. Aunt Leela sweeping her porch, boys chasing hens, Brother Ellis humming that same tune he always hummed, but their eyes lingered a beat too long. Maybe they saw the strain in my arms or the sweat still on my brow. Maybe they smelled the lake clinging to me. Inside my cabin, I locked the door, dropped the bar across it. The air felt heavy, full of waiting. I pulled the chest out from under the net and set it near the stove. Water pooled around its legs. My reflection shimmered on the damp metal. Another rattle, louder this time. I stepped back, hand on my knife, though I couldn't say what I meant to do with it. My pulse thumped behind my ears. Part of me wanted to run, to push the thing back into the lake and forget it ever rose. But another part, deeper, older, wanted to know what story it carried, what piece of time had chosen me. I threw an old tarp over it, as if that could mute the sound. Then I sat at the table, listening to the clock tick, pretending I wasn't afraid. But fear has a way of thickening the air, making the walls lean close. By sundown I hadn't moved. I ate nothing, drank only lake water gone flat, and still I heard it sometimes, soft taps from within, like fingers testing for a way out. That night, as I lay staring at the ceiling, I thought I heard whispers outside, low and scattered, a woman's voice, then laughter, then silence. I got up, peered through the curtain. Nothing but moonlight and the line of my own footprints. But the next morning, the whispers weren't gone. They were waiting.
By midweek, I couldn't walk the dirt path to the lake without someone calling my name. Not in greeting, more like testing the sound of it. Word travels fast when the day's work is light and hope is scarce. I first heard it at the well, 2 women drawing water, voices carrying easy in the morning air. "You hear about Andre?" one said. "Got something worth more than all our nets," the other whispered back. They smiled when they saw me, but the silence that followed was sharp enough to cut. At the docks, the men were no better. They asked what bait I'd used, how deep I'd fished, if the lake was hiding more. I laughed it off, said, "Ain't nothing down there but mud and memory." But the words didn't convince even me. That evening, as I carried my gear home, a boy darted past, shouting, "Mama, he found treasure!" And just like that, my quiet life cracked open. By sundown, eyes followed me from porches and doorways. Folks I'd known all my years now looked at me like I was holding back something that should be shared or stolen. I tried to ignore it, kept my face plain, my voice steady, but every step home felt heavier, as if the road itself wanted to see what I carried. Inside, the chest waited in its corner, still draped in cloth. I hadn't dared open it, but I could feel it working on me all the same. The house felt smaller every day, the air thicker. Sometimes I'd catch myself glancing at the door, half expecting someone to knock. No one did, not yet. I stopped visiting the market, stopped fishing too. My nets hung dry, my hands restless. I told myself I'd go back once the talk died down, but talk in this village never dies. It just changes shape. The whispers grew bolder. Someone swore they saw me dragging gold from the lake. Someone else said the chest belonged to spirits, that I'd stolen their rest. By the third night, I could feel it in my bones. Envy mixed with fear makes a dangerous crowd. Late one night, as I doused the lamp, a floorboard creaked that wasn't mine. I froze, knife in hand, waiting for sound to explain itself. Nothing but the hum of crickets. Still, when I stepped outside before dawn, the ground told a different story. Prints in the mud, too fresh, too close.
The prints by my door disappeared after the next rain, but the unease didn't. It moved inside, found a seat at my table, slept where I slept. Nights grew longer, walls thinner. The chest sat under its cloth like a wound I refused to look at. I started hearing things, soft scrapes against the window, the crunch of gravel where no one should be. Once I caught a glimpse of movement at the gate, the outline of someone watching. By the time I stepped outside, the road was empty, but the air still trembled, holding their breath. I stopped lighting my lamps after dusk, sat in the dark with my back to the wall, knife across my knees, listening. The house creaked like it was trying to speak. Every sound felt personal. When the wind pushed at the shutters, my heart jumped to my throat. Sleep gave up on me. I'd sit by the chest, staring at the shape of it in the moonlight. The lock gleamed faintly through the cloth, as if mocking my fear. Sometimes I'd whisper to it, nonsense words, maybe prayers, anything to fill the silence. By day, the village turned colder. No one waved anymore. Even the children stopped calling my name. It's strange how quickly respect turns into suspicion. Folks see a man guarding something and start imagining what's inside. One afternoon, Brother Ellis came by, hat in hand, voice too kind. "Andre," he said, "people worried, say you keeping something that ain't meant to be kept." I told him I caught nothing but trouble, but he just looked past me, eyes narrowing toward the covered shape in the corner. When he left, he didn't bless my door like he used to. That night, the whispers came back. Not outside this time, closer. A shuffle of boots on my porch, a faint breath against the doorframe. I held still, every muscle tight. Then came the sound, wood flexing under pressure, a soft rattle of metal against latch. I pressed my back to the door and felt it tremble against me. Whoever was out there didn't knock. They tested, pulled once, twice, then stopped. The silence that followed was worse, because silence meant they'd be back. When dawn came, I found a fresh nick in the door's edge, like a warning carved just for me.
I knew the night they'd come. You can smell trouble before it arrives. The air turns thick, sour, like rain that's lost its patience. The moon didn't rise that night. Even the crickets had sense enough to keep quiet. I sat in the dark with the knife in my hand, back against the wall, heart counting seconds. The chest loomed in the corner, its cloth drawn tight, like it too was holding its breath. Then it started. A scrape at the latch, a whisper, a shove. Wood cracked sharp. The door jumped off its hinges, light from a single lantern slicing through the dark. 3 men, maybe 4, faces shadowed but voices familiar. One of them, Jonas, I think, spat my name like it owed him something. "Where's the gold, Andre?" I told him there was none, but words meant nothing in that room. They rushed me, the smell of sweat and iron filling the air. I swung wild, the knife glinting once before someone's shoulder caught my ribs. We hit the floor, bodies thudding like sacks of grain. The lamp crashed, fire flared, then died. Only the sound of breath and curses remained. Someone kicked the chest hard. It rang out deep and hollow. "Open it," one shouted. I drove my elbow back, felt contact, heard a grunt. Another grabbed me by the collar, but I twisted free, shoving him into the wall. The knife flashed again, this time only warning, enough to send them stumbling for the door, cursing my name, promising return. And silence. I stood there shaking, chest heaving, sweat and fear mingling down my neck. The house smelled of smoke and broken wood. My hands trembled too hard to keep the knife steady. When the echo finally faded, I turned to the chest. The cloth had slipped halfway off, the lock catching the faint orange of dying embers. For a second, I thought it looked alive, even breathing. I knelt beside it, pressed my palm against the metal. Cold, still, but heavier now somehow, as if it had swallowed every noise, every secret of that night. I realized then the danger wasn't just from the outside. Whatever that chest carried, it was working on me too. So when the first hint of dawn broke through the cracks of my shattered door, I knew what I had to do. It was time to open it.
Morning came soft and gray, But inside my house, nothing felt new. My hands still shook as I cleared the floor, swept away the splinters, and set the chest in front of me. Its weight seemed doubled, as if the night had settled into it. I fetched my hammer, my chisel, and an old file that had belonged to my father. Tools meant for mending boats, not breaking secrets. The lock was thick, iron swollen with rust, but I'd made up my mind. The first blow rang through the room like a church bell. Dust fell from the rafters. The second strike split the hasp, and a sliver of light leaked through the seam. When it finally gave, the sound it made wasn't a snap, it was a sigh. I lifted the lid. No gold, no coins, no glitter to blind me from what I saw. Just the soft crumble of paper, edges black with rot, ink bled to ghost. Letters tied with frayed ribbon, scraps of fabric, a rusted compass, and a small brass nameplate. The air smelled of salt and time. I reached in, fingers trembling. One letter still held its words clear enough to read. I unfolded it slow, the way you handle bones. It was dated 1843, written in a hand steady but tired. To my children, should these words ever find you. The rest told of a man enslaved on the very land our village sat upon, who had hidden his own records before trying to escape across the lake. He never made it. The letter ended mid-line, the ink blot like a wound. I sat there for a long time, heart beating in my throat. The lake hadn't given me treasure, it had given me memory, proof of a story our soil had tried to forget. I gathered every piece with care, laid them out on the table to dry. The compass still pointed true, though to where I couldn't tell. I thought of the men who'd come for gold, of the whispers outside, of all the hunger that makes folks cruel. The chest wasn't cursed, it was witness. By evening, I'd packed the papers in oilcloth, ready to carry them into town. Someone needed to see, someone needed to know. But as night fell, I felt the weight of new fear. Because truth, once unearthed, is its own kind of danger. And outside my window, voices were rising again.
I walked into town at first light, the oilcloth bundle held tight against my chest. The road was slick with dew, and the world felt hushed, like even the trees were watching. Every step I took echoed down the empty lane, past shuttered windows and half-burnt lamps. Folks saw me coming, but no one waved. By the time I reached the courthouse steps, my shirt clung damp to my back. The clerk looked up, startled, when I laid the bundle on his desk. "What's this?" he asked. "Something that belongs to all of us," I said. He unwrapped it slow, cautious, like maybe I'd brought him a snake. When he saw the papers, his breath caught. He read the first page, then another, then called for someone else, then more. Before long, the room filled with voices, whispering dates and names, running fingers over seals long dead. They called in a man from the college, Professor Langston, a soft-spoken sort, with eyes too sharp to miss much. He said the letters were a miracle, proof of a local history lost to the water. He said my name should be recorded alongside the man who wrote them. I nodded, but the praise didn't sit right. Out in the square, the villagers had gathered. Some stared with wonder, others with something colder. I could hear 'em. "He lyin'. He found gold and traded it for fame. Ain't no fisherman that lucky." I'd come searching for truth, but all I found was a mirror.
People see what they want, and they want what they can't have. By sunset, the professor promised to preserve everything, build an exhibit even. He thanked me like I'd done something noble. But I knew better. The lake had only lent me its story for a while. On the walk home, I passed Brother Ellis's porch. He didn't speak, just tipped his hat. Half respect, half distance. Children watched from behind fences, whispering still. I felt lighter and heavier all at once. My name might live longer than I will, but peace? That's something history never gives back for free. When I reached my cabin, I left the door unbarred for the first time in weeks. The lake shimmered in the dusk, quiet as a kept secret. I thought about leaving the village altogether, but the water held me where I stood. Some things you can't outrun. You just learn to live beside them.
Years have passed, but the mornings still begin the same. Mist low on the water, line cold kneaded my feet, the soft dip of oars against the lake's skin. Folks don't whisper my name anymore, not out loud. They read it sometimes on a plaque downtown beside the chest under glass. Discovered by Tillman, 1903. That's all it says. They left out the nights, the fear, the sound of a door breaking under fists that once called me brother. Maybe that's for the best. Stories live longer when they're told clean. I come out here most days, not to fish for food, but to listen. Water keeps its secrets close, but sometimes I feel the echo of what it gave me. A small tremor under the hull, a pulse through the oar. I swear it remembers. When the sun hits the surface just right, I see my reflection beside another. A trick of light, maybe, or something deeper. I imagine that man from the letters looking back, proud that someone finally heard him. His story floats now in classrooms and books and mouths that never knew his name. I used to think I'd been cursed, chosen by accident. Now I know better. The lake wasn't punishing me, it was trusting me, asking me to carry what others buried. The village changed too. Folks fish different parts now, say my side's haunted. Children dare each other to row out past the cypress bend. Some nights I hear them laughing across the water. It makes me smile. They'll learn soon enough that ghosts don't always come to harm you. Some just want to be remembered. The chest itself, empty now, rests in that museum, polished, admired, its story retold by voices that never felt the mud on their hands. That's fine. The truth don't mind where it sleeps, so long as it's awake. I cast my line and watch the ripples spread. Each circle fades slower than the one before, like time trying to touch its own reflection. I used to believe the lake ended where my eyes did. Now I know it has no end, just layers, waiting for someone patient enough to listen. And I'll keep listening, because somewhere beneath me, more stories turn in the dark, waiting their turn to rise.